right, folks, I want to welcome you back, and especially if you are a new viewer to the channel. I know a lot of you are coming from the Hard Bastards, so welcome again. We're going to do a little bit of not just a weekend review, but I guess some notable news. And there are three things I want to discuss. First of all, this decision by Tulsi Gabbard to, I guess, pull out from her congressional reelection. A lot of people are debating what is the way forward for that. And the truth is, I'll give you the three different scenarios and then which one I think is actually going to be the real motivation for it. The first motivation is the one that a lot of her fans are saying, which is, well, she's going all in on the presidential election. She wants to show that she's committed entirely to defeating A, the other Democrats, and B, Trump. Then the second motivation would be that she does not think she could win her congressional primary in Hawaii, which is possible given the fact that she has burnt a lot of bridges within the party, and that would include the Hawaii Democratic Party. I don't think that people in Hawaii who are very senior and have built relations with other politicians across the country are going to let Tulsi Gabbard rain on their parade, and it's very possible that her primary opponent would be able to raise a lot of money from people who find it convenient for Tulsi Gabbard to disappear. So that's the second motivation. And the third motivation people are talking about is that if she was to be running for that position, she would also have to renege on actually running as a third-party presidential candidate if and when the DNC does decide to, blackball her in the Democratic primary race for president. So I would say that of those, the second possibility is very, very likely. The idea that she's going to run as a third-party candidate was probably very attractive to many activists and supporters of Tulsi Gabbard. And I know that a lot of people, there's certainly people who know me personally who think that I'm a Tulsi Gabbard fanboy. But the reason that I've been pushing Tulsi Gabbard is not because she is smoking hot and she has great workout videos. It's mostly because there has to be some voice of reason regarding Russiagate within the Democratic Party, and there's virtually no one besides Tulsi Gabbard, and therefore what she's doing with this is signaling that the party is it's completely gone over to the side of lying, warmongering, allowing the intelligence agencies and defense contractors and the military-industrial complex and neocons to influence the party. So she will not be able to fight on so many fronts. Remember, so at the beginning of the year, she has to fight in her own local primary and for the Democratic primary for president. So she has to be flying around the country, also likely having to do at least some of her duties as a congresswoman in Washington, D.C., right? Remember, she's a serving congresswoman. So it's not as if she doesn't have a real job to actually do. And then she also has to fly around the country doing events for her own campaign. So with all due respect, no, I don't think Tulsi Gabbard is capable of winning her local primary. And I think that eventually she might be just, booted from the race by the Democrats and have to run maybe as a third party, but even a third party candidacy. I want you guys to think about it. A lot of people are comparing it to Ross Perot. The Ross Perot candidacy was able to succeed, if you can call that success, and it was a success if you talk about third-party candidacies, but it was able to succeed largely because Ross Perot was a self-made man who was independently wealthy and could fund his own campaign. Tulsi Gabbard has none of those advantages. None of them. And people who are now raising the alarm that, oh, she's going to draw votes away from Donald Trump, therefore winning the race for the Democrat. They're saying this is essentially what their theory is. Elizabeth Warren is going to be, or whoever, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, is going to be the Democratic nominee. And Tulsi Gabbard is going to pretend to draw votes away from the Democrats, but in reality, all of these weakling Republican conservative voters who are too, I guess, entranced by her. She's like a siren or a mermaid in the ocean. By the way, I saw, if you want to see a great movie, a little squeamish, but still, if you want to see it, The Lighthouse. I'm considering doing a review on it. But yeah, go watch it. You will be knocked off your feet. But in any case, she is like a mermaid in the sea, seducing these conservative voters to vote against Donald Trump for Tulsi Gabbard, therefore swinging the race for Warren, Sanders, Biden, whoever. I don't see it. I see if she does run as a third party, she might not be able to even harm the Democrats' chances, let alone Donald Trump. The reason that I've been telling people that if you are a primary voter, especially an early state primary voter, if you live in Iowa, I have a person I know, Dane Murphy, lives in Iowa. I think he still does YouTube, maybe not. If you live in New Hampshire, if you live in Nevada, South Carolina, you should go out and vote for Tulsi Gabbard, even if you're the most staunch Republican, you're pro-life, you're Second Amendment, because the more you can get delegates to the DNC who will act as skeptics for the Russiagate delusion there and create a scene and be a part of the chaos of what could very well be a contested convention, the better it could be if that's what you want to do. If you're a conservative voter, you should vote for her in the primary. I wouldn't vote for her in the general election. I'll be upfront about it. I don't agree with her stances on issues like education, issues like abortion, issues like the Second Amendment, any of those. So, no. The second issue is this new probe that's going on. It's not a new probe, but it's been upgraded to a criminal inquiry. And this is from the Epoch Times, Jeff Carlson, which is a very good source. So, excuse me. So, you are going to see a lot of panic over this, and there's a very good reason for that. The truth of the matter is that what John Durham is able to do now as a criminal investigator, as a person who has a grand jury and is able to indict people, is much, much stronger than any of the different so-called probes that either Congress or the Justice Department have done in the past 4 or 5 years. It's more powerful because a grand jury can recommend to indict, and therefore, once John Durham does get the go-ahead for certain of these, I guess you could call them suspects, like the two people pictured here, James Clapper and John Brennan, once that happens, it will be full-on panic from the media. First of all, both of these people are employed. I believe that James Clapper is with the NBC family of networks. And John Brennan, if I'm not mistaken, was with CNN. I could be mixed up with them, but the point is that if you find that these two people who have been spreading their lies through the media for the past 3 years are also involved in criminal activity in their capacity as the heads of the CIA and the Director of National Intelligence, those networks' credibility is going to go down the tubes, and they're going to have to explain to their target audience, the people who have believed them for so many years, they're going to have to explain to them, why is it that for 3 or 4 years they have spun the story exactly the opposite way and featured people on their networks that have a conflict of interest with the story, which is very important. If you are a target of an investigation and you're also reporting on that investigation for a media outlet, that media outlet has put someone with a conflict of interest as their coverage, and therefore they can no longer claim to be an unbiased source of information for it. It would be the same as if Ted Bundy was to be a correspondent for his own trial with the New York Times. That's not the way that journalism is supposed to work. Now, it's not as if there's hard rules and laws about this, but if you think about the testimony that was earlier this week, you should see on Viva Fry's channel concerning Ocasio-Cortez and her questioning of Mark Zuckerberg, where she was asking, well, can people just lie and Facebook will just take their money and they can put ads on? And Zuckerberg said, well, yes. I mean, that's the way freedom of speech works. That's the way our standards work. And therefore, people who use this skewed point of view, like Ocasio-Cortez, if they are watching what's going on with this probe, they're going to be in full-on rage mode because they won't be able to understand why it is that suddenly people who were for 3 years looked at as authorities are going to be looked at as frauds by most of the rest of the country. Now, that includes, by the way, Andrew McCabe, who has been, I believe he's contracted with CNN. So the Durham probe, the more we get details of it, if this does come to fruition, and you do see people being indicted and having to go to court, some of those people, depending on how many are netted, could create an even bigger problem for the Democratic Party and the media. And it's very simple. The issue is that when people are brought into trial, some people choose to do a joint defense and everybody kind of bands together and they act as, they have one team of counsel. And then some people, when there is a conflict between one defendant and another, where one person is able to shift the blame for a certain crime to another person, some people will decide to not cooperate in defense with the rest of the defendants or with any of the or with a single defendant. So maybe one defendant gets kicked out or one defendant decides to stay out. And what could occur is that you'll have multiple people who point the finger at other ones at the trial and try to incriminate them. And that would create absolute and total pandemonium among the Democrats and the media. And this is what was lacking during the Mueller probe. During the Mueller probe, the only person who they got to, if you use the phrase, flip, was Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen couldn't produce any criminal activity on the part of Donald Trump, so therefore it was useless. So in this case, you have people who are directly involved in what happened concerning the decision of the Justice Department and the intelligence agencies to look into Donald Trump and possibly spy on Donald Trump, as William Barr, the Barbarian, has said. I haven't used that nickname for a while, but yes, the Barbarian could be back. And this time he could be out for blood. And the Democrats are in serious trouble if some of these people start to point fingers at a higher level of people. Who are those people? They could be Ben Rhodes, the deputy director of deputy national security advisor. It could be the national security advisor herself, Susan Rice. It could be people like Loretta Lynch, the attorney general. And it could be Barack Obama himself. It could be people within the State Department. I don't know if John Kerry was privy to it. It could even be Vice President Biden. And that disaster would likely create a very, very difficult period for these news agencies. They would have to, unless they decide to flip their editorial line or suddenly change their behavior entirely, they would have to constantly twist the story to appear as if it's preposterous what's going on and that Barr is on some sort of persecutory mission from Donald Trump. And there actually was one earlier. So this is the way the Huffington Post is covering it. and they're calling Justice Department opens criminal investigation into Russia probe, reports what had been Attorney General William Barr's administrative review of the origins of the Russia investigation has become a criminal inquiry, the New York Times says. And you can actually see that they use the word conspiracy theory several times, 3 times. It says, and they refer to George Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos learned that Russia had such information from Maltese professor Joseph Mifsud, though he has continued to push a conspiracy theory that the academic was actually a CIA plant trying to frame him and, by extension, Trump. Now, the truth is that if you even look at Rachel Maddow yesterday, she reported that Barr went to Rome and had meetings with the Prime Minister of Italy in which the Prime Minister confirmed that certain people were operating at the behest of the CIA in Italy at the time when this was supposedly happening, including Mifsud. Mifsud was in Rome at the time. The former campaign aide's defense lawyers acknowledged that Papadopoulos lied, minimized, and omitted material facts to the FBI about its foreign contacts, including about when he had learned from Mifsud that the Russians had information to share about Clinton. But that's not something that proves that what Mifsud is saying is true. So this is how they lie about stories in order to continue to obfuscate what's really going on. Did George Papadopoulos lie to the FBI about what happened concerning Joseph Mifsud? Perhaps. That does not validate the proposition that Joseph Mifsud did indeed work for Russia or have that information. So it's really shifting the issue from what Joseph Mifsud did as opposed to what George Papadopoulos acknowledged to the FBI and whether it was true or not. And that's how you shift the criminal guilt from the person who actually is doing most of the action to a person who is, if you can call him that, a passive partner in this transaction. Then, the second time they use conspiracy theory is this. It says it's been widely concluded that Russia was responsible for hacking the DNC servers in 2016. How can you conclude something when you don't have any evidence and nobody has been put on trial for hacking the DNC servers? The only people who were indicted on the part of the Russian government were people who bought Facebook ads and a couple of organizations that, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for, kind of nonsense ads and things like that. But the president and right-wing websites has continued to push a conspiracy theory that cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike, which the DNC hired to investigate the hack, falsely accused Russia and instead was the one behind the hack as some sort of elaborate cover-up. That's not what the cover-up is. There was no hack. The truth of the matter is that there was a leaker within the DNC who gave the documents to WikiLeaks, and therefore Russia has nothing to do with this. Okay, this is trying to muddle everything and put it into the hands of Putin when he was not involved in this issue at all. Trump calls CrowdStrike a Ukrainian company, even though it is based in California and was co-founded by a Russian-born U.S. citizen. The conspiracy theory is part of the current Trump-Ukraine scandal in which Trump asked Ukraine's president to investigate CrowdStrike in addition to his political rival, Joe Biden. So when you look at the way the media is going to cover what's going on here, yes, it's all about conspiracy theories and trying to portray everything that the Justice Department is doing as some sort of wandering off into the forest to look for the Yeti or something. That is what they're going to try to do, and you have to pay attention, and if you can, you should try your best to hold them accountable, basically respond to them, send letters, do whatever you can. Try to make it clear that no one believes these people, and especially amplify critical media, deny clicks to these websites. The Huffington Post is already in serious financial trouble, according to Tim Pool. So that's about it. We'll probably talk sometime, beginning of next week, maybe sometime during the week, and I'll talk to you later. like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and Minds.com, as well as on Subscribestar if you want to donate, and on Gab at Starscream85. On the rest of them, it's at Chef Leopard.
Inside my future eye, what I see just makes me cry.